Support for this podcast and the following message are brought to you by RPM Studios. Located at 1027 Campbell's Run Road in beautiful Carnegie, Pennsylvania, RPM offers a full line of digital production services, including multi-track recording, podcasting, sound design, video production, and digital graphics. To learn more, check out their information page on Facebook at www.facebook.com/RPM Studios. Now on with the show.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a
podcaster.
Do you expect me to talk?
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
You have a big mouth.
Okay. Wow. So here we are, at long last. I've been talking about doing the Don't Quit Your Day Job podcast for quite a long time. I've always wanted to do this. This is something I've always wanted to do. A lot of years in the music business, I've got to realize a lot of things, not the least of which is some of my goals and personal dreams. And I've been very fortunate having some of the experiences that I've had in this industry. But this is one that goes all the way back to childhood. Since I think it was like my 7th birthday or something, when my father, whom I saw only on the weekends, bought me a little Panasonic tape recorder, and I started making little radio shows. And I always had a little personal private dream that I was going to do this somewhere along the line. And I guess this is the culmination of a lot of things, hopefully. A lot of experiences, a lot of desires. We'll see how it turns out. I have no idea if I'm going to be any good at this at all. I have no clue, but I'm going to try. And hopefully, as the shows go on, I will improve and get better with the way that I talk to people, the way that I express myself, the way that I'm able to draw stories, emotions, ideas, out of the people that I speak to on this show. So my first guests here on the show are Bill Hubauer of the Neil Morse Band. And for you, those of you who don't know, Neil Morse was a member of the band Spock's Beard, and one of the more groundbreaking of the modern progressive music movement. And I've known Bill for about 20 years, and prior to that, he played in a lot of local Pittsburgh bands, but now he's out with Neil, but he still has his own project going, and we're going to be talking about that, and it's called, the name of the band is We Came From Space, and the name of the new album is While You Were Away. We'll also be joined by We Came From Space guitarist Dave Buzard, who's also going to be on the show. And it was great. I'm recording this monologue after we did the interview, and Dave and Bill were fantastic. Very interesting, very intelligent. And in fact, that's what I really hope. That's my hope for you, the listener, for this show. What I hope I can provide that might be a little bit different from other podcasts is to give some kind of real insight through empirical knowledge, through experience, people that have really lived it and ground it out in the music industry, how they made it, what they did to survive, what they do to survive, and where their big breakthroughs came, and the experiences that they've had, what they've learned from it. Just to really expose things in a way, viscerally, that maybe hasn't really been done before, at least not in a meaningful way, not the way that I hope to do this. My hope for myself is actually to get from this show is I just have a love of conversation. I think it's a lost art, especially here in the United States. And I just love speaking to people and becoming, privy to their insight and their feelings and their thoughts, their dreams, disappointments. And hopefully we can lay that all on the table for you during the course of these podcasts. Also, we're being joined on the show by Ron Pullman, who is the owner of RPM Studios, where we're recording this show. And so you're going to hear another voice on there, just so you know who you're listening to. And Ron's instrumental in helping us to get this podcast started. So without further ado, I'm going to just kind of dive right in. And I'm asking Bill about the new album, and he's going to just cut right in. And I hope you enjoy the show. Let the adventure begin.
Well, the new record is actually the second We Came From Space album. First one came out about 4 years ago or so, and we had some personnel changes. But the interesting trivia is it took us immediately when we released the first album to a smattering of applause. Let's get right on the new album and we'll get it done really fast. And it took us 4 full years to finish the second album.
Now, what was the reason for that?
Because we only worked on it like 2 or 3 days a month. So, and it just, I got really busy with the Neil Morris Band, and we like wrote and recorded and toured 2 albums during the time it took us to finish the We Came From Space album. And the guys in the band were really understanding, and they just, okay, well, Bill's busy. And but I think the fact that we got to the end of this 4-year thing and like nobody bailed out, and we were all still really enthusiastic about it after 4 years, and we thought, well, if we're not sick of it ourselves after 4 years, maybe there's something here. So
there's something refreshing about doing it that way, though. I noticed when I write music, over a period of time, certain things evolve, and so did that affect your music?
Yeah.
I know that does. Dave, tell me about that.
Well, just like lyrically, there were some rewrites. I mean, we rewrite lyrics up till we're standing in front of the mic.
Yeah.
So there's never a bad time. They're never in stone until they're on the track. And I think I put a slide guitar part down while we were essentially mixing down. It was like, that needs something. So, everything was evolving right up till the day we said it's done.
That's unusual. You see the music evolving, but the lyrics, what would prompt you to have to change the lyrics?
Conceptually, they didn't really evolve. It was just, we are all real sticklers for no words are just in there by chance.
Experience, right? I mean, what's ever happening in everybody's lives kind of affects a little bit about the feel, right? I mean, so over a 4-year period, a lot of different things are probably interacting with all of you, particularly you and Bill.
For sure. And I mean, I don't know how deep into the weeds you want to get to that, but yeah, I mean, Bill talks about how great it was that nobody wandered off or just bailed on this project while we were recording. For me personally, I mean, as much as, I really like being a part of this band, it was essential for me in my evolution to wrap up a chapter of my life that was very much infused in the writing of this album.
So there's a real kinship there. How long have you guys actually been playing together in this or other projects?
Well, we were best friends in high school, and we used to play a lot of air guitar in his bedroom, and we
still do, right?
We never actually played together in anything other than just like a jam session for 30 years, and then we reconnected, and we thought we should do something, and so we set out to do that, and that was about 2012, maybe
11 or 12,
11 or 12,
probably,
yeah.
What was the musical inspiration? Obviously, you shared a love of a particular sound.
Well, for the first album, we were very deliberate about, we wanted to let's make music that would have been like what we were listening to in high school, and that was very deliberate.
And that was what were you listening to?
You go ahead. You can tell what.
Like if in the late 70s, if you listen to an hour of FM radio in Pittsburgh on YDD or WDVE, there wasn't a strict format. You would hear an Elton John song. Yeah. You would hear a punk song. You would hear...
Especially on YDD.
Right, yeah, YDD, yeah.
Freeform.
You know, you would...
Jeff Beck.
Yeah, you would hear an album side of Genesis, you know? So it was like, why does nobody... You know, why can't you just turn on an hour of radio and get that breath of fresh air that you used to get? So we wanted to make an album that sounded like that.
Obviously, it was diverse, and you could hear Marshall Tucker right next to Kiss. You know.
Yeah. I went through a Southern rock phase, and Molly Hatchet and Leonard Skinner and Blackfoot and all that stuff, and
the Henry Paul Band, the Outlaws.
Henry Paul Band. I still love the first Henry Paul Band album, and
the first Molly Hatchet album is
really
great.
It's
absolutely wonderful record.
What happened?
Yeah.
And then then I kind of discovered. You discover things. I discovered. For me, it was more. I discovered more progressive rock things. I got in. Discovered Yes and Genesis and Rush, all those kinds of bands, and like I said, because you would hear them on the radio back then, and I always tell the story that you would hear a song on the radio that would blow your mind, and you may never know who it was. You may never know
when you play it. Say it.
Yeah, like they would. Sometimes they would say it, sometimes they wouldn't, and you would just wait by the radio. Maybe they'll play it again this hour, and I'll find out what it is.
That irritated me a lot too.
Yeah, because there was no internet, right?
There was no back announcing, and they would just forget about it. And then you would have to call into the radio station. I can remember doing that a couple of times. Songs that just grabbed me so much that I just had to know who they were. Yeah. I remember once Joe Walsh, Rocky Mountain Way, and I was just a tyke when that record came out. And oddly enough, the Knack, My Sharona.
Oh, sure.
First time I heard that song, I was like, wow.
That's a great song. That's great.
What was the name of the song we were about to listen to?
Vivid Colors.
Oh, Vivid Colors. I want to get back to something here. And so taking that song, how did that song evolve over time? And did it evolve?
Not very much. That was one of those... Probably we had it hammered down pretty well in a day, all of the music. And then lyrically, that was one of those things that it was probably a couple of hours because I wanted... It's really important to me to convey the idea. But then the game is, for me, like that whole song has... Pranksters, Panic, Static, each line rhymes, and there's two words in that line, in every line that have the same first.
Like a puzzle.
Yeah.
It was a puzzle.
So, but as soon as, it's like Jenga, as soon as that would ever fall apart for me, like if I couldn't, like if the third verse had to be like, I couldn't do it, the whole tower falls over. Yeah. So that was nice that the Jenga, the tower held together while I pulled out all the words.
Interesting. So, did you have the same level of progressive rock as Bill?
Not as deep, but the progressive rock that affected me is still really with me.
Which is
the Danger Money album by UK. Mm-hmm. That I am a guitar head through and through. There is not a guitar within shouting distance of that album, and it is still a very rock and roll album.
Right.
Drama by Yes.
Now, did you try to emulate Holdsworth's style? Very difficult.
Right, and I'm not a fan of the ultra compressed tone. Mm-hmm. I am much more the Pat Travers, where
loose.
he's
open.
barely keeping it between the ditches. I mean, everything just is like, you know what I mean? And I have chills now just thinking about those guitar tones that are just like, he's going to break a string any second, or he's going to get too experimental and fall apart.
Well, there again, I mean, so if you were into Robin Trower, did you listen to Robin Trower?
I am more into the sons of, you know, like I think the son of Trower is Pat Travers, so he's the wayward son, you know. You know.
He wasn't too far behind Trower,
No, but just enough that, you know, I mean, he probably wasn't even an influence on Travers, but just that half generation that it was important for them to play a little louder than the guys just before them.
Well, they both kind of came from the Jimi Hendrix school.
Sure. So, absolutely.
Frank Marino.
Right. And that was another. There was this live Frank Marino album.
Oh yeah, the first live record.
I believe so.
Yep.
That like not even all of the songs were represented in their full length. It was like there were 4 full length songs and 3 like have a taste of this, and it was like it was still magic, you know.
That was back in the days when a record was 40 minutes long.
Yeah.
And there was no filler.
Right.
No filler.
But we would come, and this was like, you know, I'd come to his place and I'd bring my little stack of records with me, and he'd have his, what'd you get this week? You know, anything new? And we'd play stuff for each other, and some of what I played for him, I'm sure he didn't like that much, and some of what he played for me, I was like, you know, it's okay. But we were able to kind of, you know, you cross-pollinate and you kind of share things. And that's back when you put the needle on and you just sit there like looking at the speaker because there was nothing else to do. You would just stare at the stereo, or you'd hand me the album sleeve and you look at that for a little bit, and you look back at the speaker and you sit there and you, that was cool, you know, but you were listening. That was, what are you doing? I'm listening to a record.
Right.
It wasn't like, it's not just on and I'm doing something else. That's what you were doing.
Yeah, listening was and still is for me, and probably you guys. It's an active.
Sure.
It's an active
Absolutely.
thing.
Well, they've come up with, they actually have a term for it now, because apparently it's so rare that we have to come up with a label. They call it appointment listening, you know, where you actually make a decision to sit down and listen to a record. And how many people really do that now? Yeah. But those were magical times, reading the liner notes and, you know, holding that vinyl in your hand, and, you know, so
and so much of that rock and roll that I loved for the guitar. The lyrics were kind of secondary at best. You know, there was a lot of Moon, June, you know, stuff like that. And then I really thought that like the second wave of new wave and punk writers, they were talking about such.
Give me an example.
Like the entire Catholic Boy album by Jim Carroll.
Jim Carroll.
It's all first person stuff. And as a kid, 10th grade in Western Pennsylvania, I had not experienced any of that stuff, but I felt like I was getting dirty.
Well, Jim was a poet before he became a songwriter.
Absolutely.
So he kind of had that in him. It was a little more sophisticated, a little more breaking down the boundaries.
But it still was very rock and roll, and it was right up there. So I've always gravitated. I still want it to be very rock and roll and feeling like it's about to fall apart, but it should still be articulate.
How did you feel about lyricists like, okay, say like the Yes record or Genesis or something like that? You know, did you feel that those lyrics were pretentious and maybe a little bit caged?
I did until I read me some books. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like
or Rush. I mean, their lyrics.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's. I think Rush is. Every one of those guys are great players. I don't hear a lot of emotion ever in any of their stuff, and after a while, that always left me a little cold.
Well, even in concert, it kind of. I mean, you go to see a Rush concert. I mean,
But at least when you see them live, you go, well, these guys are having fun.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
None of their, I mean, outside of some of Permanent Waves, none of their stuff sounded fun or menacing or joyful. You know,
It's interesting. I never. I mean,
It was cerebral.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you, but I mean, I was much bigger Rush fan than you, I think, and I found a lot of joy listening to the music, but I wasn't hearing a lot of joy in the music, which was an interesting thought. I get what you're saying, but
Well, I'll tell you something, and I was going to touch on this a little bit later, but one thing about the Neil Morse Band, that is the perfect word for it too. It's joyful. You guys like really just shine when you perform, and
The show we got to see him in Pittsburgh. You, Bill, you were fantastic.
oh, thank you. Oh. Well, and it was a dream come true for me to play. I mean, before I joined the band, Neil was at the time was my favorite artist. He was my favorite songwriter, and there's just something about his melodies and the way he marries the melodies with the lyrics, and just really reached me. And I remember when when I found out about they were having an open audition to put together more of a permanent band, because he was kind of doing like more of a pickup kind of, as a solo artist, he'd find different people for. He had a band in Europe and a band in the U.S., and people would kind of come and go, and he was trying to get more stability. And so I sent in like a video audition, and then pretty quick I got a call that I was going to come down and do an in-person audition, and it was going to be like in 2 months. And I was sick in my stomach every morning. I would wake up sick in my stomach for 2 months, and I'm not exaggerating. It was the most exhilarating and awful experience of my life, because I wanted to be a part of that so badly, and it was like I was just sick every day about the anticipation of getting down there and doing the audition. But what I found out was there wasn't. This isn't a negative on anybody else who auditioned for keyboards, but I found out that virtually immediately Neil was like, "Can we just get this guy? Do we have to do the whole audition thing?" You know. So I was in right from the beginning, and for 2 months I was agonizing over this, not knowing that I pretty much already had the gig. So,
how did you feel when? Well, obviously, you were a Spock's Beard fan prior.
Sure.
How did you feel when Neil left the band to pursue his music with his faith?
Yeah. Well,
the Christian.
I think you told me that actually at the time when it happened, before it was public knowledge. Because
you were in a Christian band at the time.
Because I was already kind of doing the thing that I was doing the Christian prog band thing. So for me, it was like, cool. Like I love Spock's Beard, but I didn't have the visceral reaction that a lot of people had about, oh, he's ruining it. He's ruining the band because he became a Christian and now he's going to quit. And you know, that was not anywhere on my thoughts at all. I was like, cool. He's found some new inspiration, and you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Well, was it because you shared that?
Plus, I shared it.
Yeah.
I shared it. So I think I wasn't worried about it. I wasn't worried about him becoming lame or anything because of it.
What was the process like? How did they? What was the audition like? And you know, what is it like to audition for Neil and Mike Portnoy?
Mike wasn't there for the audition, and actually, at the time, Mike wasn't sure he could be a full-time part of the band, so we were actually auditioning drummers as well. So, which was kind of weird. And then, so I went down and we just got in the room together and played down a few songs and
was it just you and Neil?
No, we talked for a bit by ourselves, and he had one of the drummers who was auditioning sat in for the other musician auditions, and so we did keyboards first, and then I think he had me sit in for the guitar audition, so I just played along for the guitar guys, and it was funny because he kind of slipped up a few times in the way he was talking to me, like was giving away that pretty much I had the gig. I don't think he intended to, and
That had to make you feel good.
you know, but it was like, wow, it's like I didn't know because you always, it's so hard to, it's when this is you know, for people who will understand this, when God gives you the desires of your heart, you become suspicious because it's like, well,
Am I not worthy?
you know, that's not, you know, this is what I want, and it looks like it's going to happen, so this can't be right. Something's wrong. This can't, you know. So,
like,
But you
can't
had-
be this good.
You had to feel good knowing that you were going in that direction
Yeah.
with Neil.
yeah,
That had to feel right.
Sure,
On a certain level.
sure. Yeah, I mean, it was.
But you merge that philosophy with the music business, and you're like, yeah, this is never
Yeah.
gonna.
Never
No,
goes
but it's
far.
different for me because I wasn't, and this is important to understand that this has nothing to do with business. This is not about getting a good gig that's going to further my career, because where I'm at in my life, I wasn't looking for that, and I'm still not looking for that. This is just something that I'm so lucky to get to do, and you know, it's not a full time. It's so hard for anybody to be in one band full time. You know, you have to be in, if you want to be a full time musician, you got to be in 3 or 4 bands, and this was, I only really wanted to be like, I'm just going to be it, you know, just take this one band real serious. I'm going to do this, and because I don't have time for anything else really.
Well, now you're currently working for Adobe, and you're writing software for them.
Right.
Is that
Yeah.
what-
So I'm a
you're an
software.
engineer.
You know, yeah, I'm an engineer for Adobe, and I've always programmed computers since high school. It was a hobby, and I took up that at the same time as music, and they were just fun things that I like to do, and you know, you weren't really thinking about a career. You were just thinking about what's fun, what do I like to do. When you're, you know, 16, you just kind of do stuff that you like to do. And
So
now,
you're telecommuting, you know, with your job. So you're working from home,
right.
which I guess makes it somewhat easier. I guess.
Well, they don't. It's harder for them to notice when I'm on the road for.
Well, that's just it. I mean, did you let them know right away that you had commitments with Neil's band, and how were you able to work that out?
You know, I didn't. I had my own business, my own software business that wasn't going well, and I needed an infusion of financial stability from the man. So I was very, very lucky to connect with people from Adobe and got the job. And I love it. It's a wonderful job. It's a wonderful company, and they really support the individual's external projects. They want everyone to be like fulfilled in their life. You know, if you want to do some music stuff, you do that. If you're into sports, you do that, and they try to accommodate you. You know, they're a business, so they need you to work, but they try to do everything they can do to accommodate your things.
That nurturing kind of practice, the techniques that they use, it really is kind of a Silicon Valley kind of new thing, you know, isn't it?
I would think, but I haven't worked for any of the other companies, so I don't.
Well, what did you
I don't
do
know.
before Adobe?
I just worked for a string of small companies or small startups, in design companies.
Well, what's a
different-
typical day like
For me right now,
Yeah.
well, I tend to wake up earlier than I used to, so I'm usually I get up and immediately go to work for like 2 hours, and then I break. I take a lot of little breaks all day. Then I break and get some breakfast and do personal stuff that I need to take care of, and then work some more and take another break. And if I'm playing a gig with Dave here Saturday, so I need to brush up on these songs, so I'll work on the songs for a bit, and then I'll go back. It's very integrated. I really combine. It's not like, okay, I do my day job, I go to work 9 to 5, and I come home, and then if I have enough energy after work, then I'll go, do this music thing. It's kind of all mixed together. So I'm usually working, doing something until close to when I go to bed.
Well, there again, it's less tedious by doing that, which helps the creative process. I would imagine on both ends, with your music and with your day job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can also see how that would be very personal, but yet using your creativity during the day would bleed over to your other parts of your other life, particularly with Adobe. And obviously, you play a couple hours. Let's say you're playing your sax or your piano, and now you go back to work. You're in that mindset, so it would allow you to feel creative, relaxed, and perhaps more productive, right?
Well, yeah, I think so. And if I was working in the office, if I didn't live, if I was living in San Jose and went to the office, I wouldn't be able to do that kind of integration the way that I can do working from home.
It's interesting.
What is for somebody that is a layman? What is the process? What is involved in writing software? This is all coding. Do you have an assignment given to you, and you work towards that end?
It's pretty team oriented. You have there's a product manager who manages the thing that you're producing, more from from everything the user sees to the marketing to everything. And then there's an engineering manager who's in charge of the engineers, and then they have the designers who work on the user interfaces and the graphics and things. And you basically they break whatever's going on, or they're broken down into the current process. The terminology is a story. A story is like a thing that you accomplish that's a unit of functionality that you're putting into the application, and so you get assigned, okay, I'm going to work on these 3 stories this week, and you do your thing, and there's a lot of collaboration. You get people will review your code and look at it and look for mistakes, and then you have the quality assurance people that will test the software, and so it's a very, very collaborative. I talk to people all day long. I'm not just by myself at home, just working.
Right. So you are part of a team. How do you maintain that sort of team attitude? I mean, what is the communication process like?
We do a lot of video calls.
Yeah.
So and actually, I'm very comfortable with that. It's nice to be there, but I'm happy to teleconference in.
Do you prefer being that sort of give and take that comes with a working on it with a team, as opposed to?
Yes, you get as long as the team's not too big. If you have too many people working on one thing, it becomes the overhead for managing that. It takes away from. Basically, you've heard the phrase "designed by committee," where if you have to try to satisfy everybody, what you end up with is really middle of the road, mediocre crap.
You kind of get. Do you ever run into where people will disagree with you, or just for the sake of throwing something in there? And
I have historically, not in my current teams. Everybody's pretty cool about that, and you get if you try to keep the number of people involved small enough that you can work that stuff out.
Do you like that? I mean, the give and take, the using each other as a sounding board. Because I love the team.
Yeah, and it's so much, and you'll find there's a lot of musicians are also software engineers. There's that certain mindset. The creativity is similar. There's when you get in the room with people musically and you're throwing ideas around and jamming and working on stuff, it's really very similar to 2 or 3, 4 software engineers sitting in a room saying, okay, how are we going to make this work? How are we going to solve this problem? And you're just kicking ideas around, and somebody throws out an idea and it's like, that'll never work. That's stupid. And well, okay, so you just kind of work on it. You go back and forth. It's very similar to music.
I've always found that if you have a system in place where everybody feels comfortable, they don't have to be afraid of expressing themselves. That is just critical to real creativity. And I've always liked the team process. I think that's something that's really lacking in record companies these days. There seems to be everybody wants to be a star. Symptomatic of working in America, right? I guess. So, I'm curious about something. Neil was pretty abrupt in when he left Spock's Beard, and it was pretty controversial at the time. Did you guys maintain your relationship when you left to say go on your journey with bands like 10.10? When you started working with Christian bands, did you continue to work together, or
We hadn't yet begun collaborating on anything
okay?
concrete. I mean, we wrote some songs in high school together, but he had his band and I had my band. I was in a band called Ask a Stranger, late 80s, early 90s. That had a CD out, and so it's not like Bill and I have ever had a falling out or anything like that, or there was anything of that nature. You know, we were always friends, and always had. He had his thing going on, and I had my thing going on, and when we put this together, it was like, hey, you don't have anything going on right now, neither do I. Let's, you know.
And we actually started We Came From Space just before I joined Neil, and I was actually a bit nervous about that. I felt really bad. I think, oh no, I don't know what this is going to mean for the thing that we were starting, and I thought, well, probably it will help it because I'll have a potentially larger audience who eventually will know who I am. When we released the first album, We Came From Space album, I was just a guy in the band with Neil, so nobody really knew who I was yet at that point. But then a couple years later, then when it became the Neil Morse Band, and we started writing together, and everyone was singing, and it was very, very collaborative. Then a lot more people were aware of me, and so our second album, we had a lot more people were immediately interested in, well, what's this thing that they got going on here?
Do you still keep in touch with all the guys from 10.10?
Yeah, some, not everybody. See them around, talk to them occasionally.
Danny Gochner, who now is playing with Joey Grusecki,
yeah.
And Jimmy Tanner, who's a very dear friend and who has his studio, and he's still playing. He's in a band called the Apologetics. You were in that band as well.
Yeah, I
correct?
was. Yeah, and that was the tagline is Billy Graham meets Weird Al. So it's
That's apt. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, in respect of you take regular rock songs, well-known rock songs, and replace the lyrics with Christian lyrics.
Yeah,
which
and
that's pretty a unique formula.
And with an emphasis on a lot of them are really try to be witty and funny and a lot of the whole point, the mission of the band was, the lyrics were to point people back to the Bible, so it would be a lot of scripture references and that was part of to me the clever lyrics where you're rhyming a scripture verse into the song, like Matthew 27 or something. You'd kind of rhyme something in to point back to whatever it was about. But I played with them for I don't even know how long. I played maybe 10 years. I don't know. I probably did 500 shows with them.
And you traveled.
I played like 43 states with them. But it was mostly weekend stuff. And
is that something that appeals to your nature, traveling like that and taking?
Not anymore. I quit because of the travel. I was like, I can't do this anymore. But then for a number of years, I worked just in the studio. I recorded a lot of keyboards and guitars and mixed and engineered and now pretty much I'm down to an occasional keyboard part and mastering. So
the Neil Morse Band, not only traveling around the lower 48 as you guys did with Apologetics, the Neil Morse Band is very international.
Yeah, and that was and I had never been really out of the country before, so that was an amazing thing for me and very surreal. And this is a fun tidbit. So one of the wonderful things about that genre, progressive rock, is there's progressive rock stopped.
Stop progressing.
Stop progressing. I say it's progressive rock with a capital P or progressive rock with a small p. And there's a certain style of the classic progressive rock that's the same today, pretty much as it has been for 25 years or more, 30 years or 35, 40 years. Anyway, so the fun thing is I've been writing material in that style for 25 years, and I have a backlog. I have this huge backlog of material, and so every new the new album that we do, I look through those archives and I think, oh, I always liked this. Let me bring this out and see, and we use a lot of it, and so here, one of the most popular songs on our last album came from a song that I wrote over 20 years ago, and so here I am, in the Netherlands, on stage, 2,000 people, 1,500 people, and they're singing along to this song that I wrote 20 years ago, and
That had to be amazing.
The absurdity of that hit me at that moment, and I started laughing. I thought, this is crazy, and this is, I'm just a guy who, was mostly playing in, the just Western Pennsylvania bands and not really doing much outside of that. And
It kind of makes you really realize that nothing is by accident, right? I mean, now you're looking out at that crowd, that 20-year-old song that you wrote now became evidence that this is where you were supposed to go.
And it doesn't sound, that 20-year-old song didn't sound dated because the whole genre is dated.
But it's got to be really validated.
So getting back to your new record now, so all these experiences are going on. We established the fact that, the experiences over this period of time certainly did affect perhaps some of the lyrics, perhaps some of the... How would you say your time away doing these kind of things and getting back to your project, what did you bring back to that project? Or was it?
I brought back leftover songs that they didn't like.
Well, if they become hits, they, sometimes the songs that people say, hey, this isn't really great, become fantastic.
Yeah.
So many B-sides become hits.
You really did that? I mean,
there's some
stuff that you presented to Neil, and
well, there's some stuff. I mean, they really support, when I say that when we became a band that we were all collaborating, that's just not just lip service. I mean, everybody was really interested in everybody's stuff. Neil and Mike are very dominant forces in the band, and they were really interested in what I was bringing to the table, and really liked a lot of it. And some of the stuff would be like, sounds too much like. Usually it's sounds too much like insert something here, and so that was usually the reason that something would get rejected, and so some of those bits ended up on the new We Came From Space album.
So when you bring, when you bring that song back to this table, so to speak, Dave, are you adding to it, or are you throwing new ideas into it as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does that mix affect that kind of thing that you saw from the Neil Morris, obviously?
They're unrecognizable now, because the point of this band, We Came From Space, was really to write as a band. So when I would say I would bring a song in, it was usually, or any one of us would bring in like a part. Hey, I got this cool riff. I got this verse section. Do you have something we can hook it up with? And that's just classic bands getting together and throwing ideas around and see what we can glue together and stick together.
Now it makes a little bit more sense, where you're saying that the songs are evolving up until the last minute, and you're constantly changing things. So it seems to make a little bit more sense now, because I think every band has a different way of doing things in the creative process.
And another reason that people didn't wander off from this band, this album cycle, was all four of us were invested in the writing. No one was like, oh, what am I going to, might as well go do something else because I was just doing something on Bill's record.
Yeah, right.
It was like,
right, everybody's
I want to, if any of us were the type that were in it solely for ourselves, we still would have wanted to see this through, because it'd be like, I want to get my stuff out there.
But let's take a second and check out a track from the record. Would you guys introduce the track that we're going to be hearing?
Yeah, this is a song called Vivid Colors. This is a really a great example of the collaborative song. Some of the songs might be more like, one person had more of the parts, but this one was really pretty much somebody had a riff, somebody had another chord progression, and we put them together and worked out the arrangement. Really, this can't happen with one guy. It didn't happen with one guy. It's really the unit produced this song. So
Okay. Well, let's take a second to check that out, and we'll be right back.
All of the pranksters are in a panic. All of your fans have turned fanatic. Hangnails are heartbreak, open turned opaque, and all of your stations turned to static. All of your idols gone away. Those on the path now led astray. A king in velvet for the day. The vivid colors, the vivid colors, the vivid colors turning gray. All of your sages have fallen silent, trusted and true, became a tyrant, enlightened came up lame, the pious profane, and all of the diligent defiant. All of your idols gone away. Those on the path now led astray. A king in velvet for the day. The vivid colors, the vivid colors, the vivid colors turning gray. All of your idols gone away. Those on the path now led astray. A king in velvet for the day. Not today. The vivid colors, the vivid colors, the vivid colors turning gray, 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 gray.
Well, that's a great track, and congratulations on the record. It's just a wonderful sounding record. Where was it recorded? Where did you guys record this? Bits and pieces here and there.
Yeah, the drums just very much home studio. The drums were done at the drummer's house, and most everything else was at my house. Some stuff at his house, some
Yeah.
vocals. Some
Well,
guitars.
the-
Yeah, we did.
We set the
Actually did,
guitars, guitar amps up in my upstairs hallway, which has this nice kind of natural reverb. And I live on the north side of Pittsburgh, and we stick my head out the door and make sure to see which neighbors were and weren't home, and crank up the amps. And
Are you guys originally? You're from Clarion, and now you're living on the north side. Did you grow up in Clarion, or?
Yep, just near. Yep.
And what brings you down to Pittsburgh?
I came down for work for a job.
And you are doing what?
I'm a paramedic.
Oh.
I was a paramedic for years and years up north in Jefferson County. I worked out of Punxsutawney and Brookville, and then applied for a job as a paramedic in a telemedicine clinic, and I've been doing that ever since I moved to Pittsburgh.
What made you choose that field?
Paramedicine?
Mm-hmm.
I like, I'm a little bit of a hot dog, and I like helping people. So if you're a paramedic, you can kind of be both. And I think we all want to do something that our dads can't do. And you could chase my old man all around the yard with a drop of blood on your finger.
Mm.
And so I was like, oh, he doesn't like that, and I can handle that. So I'm going to do that.
Takes a special person, though, to
absolutely.
do that job.
I don't know about that.
It really does. I mean, you do have to have caring for people. I mean,
Yes.
and you have to also have a very brave kind of going after it, trying to help people. I mean, you work all hours of the night, right? I mean, do you get called out?
Not any longer that I work in a clinic, but yeah, I've been out. I've been out on every
You
kind
spent
of
enough time in the field.
right. I've been out on every kind of call imaginable.
Yeah, I can't imagine, the sadness. I mean, I see dead animals on the road, and I'm like, oh my God. I can't imagine seeing a young boy or a young kid. I mean, that would just break my heart. And so,
Yep.
it's putting real life in your face, kind of thing. And
Right.
And-
But like, I was always, and it's so weird because I was always my mindset, and I think that's what kept me in the business when other people would bail because they'd seen too much or something. It was like, I kept myself very well trained, so if a call didn't go well, I didn't have that gnawing regret that, I didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And my philosophy was always, I was just there to help.
Mm-hmm.
I was there to bring my skills to the situation and do my level best to affect the outcome.
Try to make it better.
Right.
I mean,
And-
you're getting called on a bad situation, no matter how you look at it.
And I was always pretty much fine with the result until you get to the hospital, and then you see this guy, or then you would see the family come in, and it's like, oh, this dude I was working on was a dad, was a husband, and then it's like,
Yeah, it personalizes it for you.
Then you
let's
really
get the
realize-
truck stocked and get out of
How
here.
do you deal with that? I mean, how do you emotionally? I mean, do you have to separate yourself in some way?
Yeah, and I'm one of those guys that, as I think most men are, that are good at compartmentalizing.
Mm.
So you do that, and I have
Does any of that come out in your music?
no, I don't believe so.
Uh-huh.
But I have a dark sense of humor, and as a lot of people in medicine do, so you would kind of vent in wildly inappropriate ways, but it was never disrespect. There was never any disrespect involved in it, but just because you have to get a mindset going, because those tones at the station are going to drop again, and you can't be wrapped up in the call you were just on the call you're about to be.
What were a couple of the things that you've had to deal with that you maybe had a rougher time? I'm sure you've seen some rough things.
I remember coming from Punxsutawney. We came down to Allegheny General Hospital, and we picked up a patient. She just needed transported back to Punxsutawney. And I remember she was a great old gal. She says, I live on Perry Street, and you boys wouldn't believe the traffic on Perry Street, how fast they go. One of those kids is going to get hit on Perry Street one day. We dropped the woman off at her house, and the tones drop for a pedestrian versus car on Perry Street.
Oh, my.
We roll up, and it's a kid,
Oh, no.
as predicted.
Yeah.
And she was
Was it a lady or a girl?
a 6-year-old girl.
Oh, no.
That was 1995, and I could tell you her name,
Yeah.
And she was still breathing, still had a heartbeat. and we're working her. And I remember in the ER, whenever we would bag her, like blood and tissue would come out her nose. Sure. And I remember at one point taking a gauze pad and wiping her nose. And I thought, I always wanted a kid, to wipe their nose, but I don't think this is what what anybody wants. This is not what you want to wipe a kid's nose.
Do you have children?
I have a stepson, Nick, and this may be the first time I've ever referred to him as my stepson because he's just my son.
How old?
He's 25, 26 now. Yeah, he's his own dude, and he's a great kid. I was lucky as a stepdad to never have that overly contentious stepdad-stepson relationship.
How soon before your grandpa?
That's up to him, not me. So.
Heading in that direction?
I don't know.
And how do you deal with that? Being called grandpa?
Yeah, that would be rough, but I'm not a big label guy. Even around the station, anytime.
Just the reality of getting
right.
to that point in your life. Where,
sure.
We realize we're getting older.
Right.
And that's to that next phase.
Yeah. And it's always it's that next phase, and you have to embrace it. I mean, you can handle it however you want, but that tide's rolling in. The wave's gonna hit you, and whether it broadsides you or hits you sideways, it's you're gonna get it all. So.
And Bill, you have a daughter?
I do,
Yes.
and I have a son and another son and another son.
My God, 4 kids.
Yeah.
I wish I could do a big spit take right now as you say it.
Yeah.
And your one daughter's what? She's currently in Germany?
Yeah. Well, I think today she's in Poland.
The land of my people.
Yeah. She she's I think this is so sad. How old is she? Yeah, she's 20. She went to a performing arts college called the Young Americans and out in LA, and part of their program is the kids can audition to do tours. They go all over the world, and they do workshops with kids and stuff, performing arts workshops, and she's living the dream right now. She'll be gone for about four months in Europe and Japan.
What a great experience.
Wow.
What part of Poland?
The Polish part. I don't
Yeah.
Polish hell.
Where they make the sausages.
She told me the names of I've been to Poland a couple times, but I don't know the geography. I don't know. She told me the names of the cities, but I didn't recognize them.
Well, Krakow's a very Krakow is.
So I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's very beautiful.
One thing I wanted to touch on prior when we were discussing it, I found that the fans for progressive rock were very exuberant. No matter where you go. And it gave me an opportunity in my travels just to see there are some differences in the different countries. I mean, what were your observations? Where did you like traveling? What were your favorites?
Well, when you think about what I imagine like an enthusiastic American audience from like 1978. When I imagine what that would be like, the Netherlands is where that's at.
Yep.
That's who they are. That's what I remember the Prague audiences are like back in that day. But then you go, and some places are a little more reserved. But I don't know. It's just you go south and they get crazy.
South being
Italy,
Italy.
Italian
Oh
fans.
my gosh, Spain.
The Italian fans, they just want to touch you, and they just want to,
And the enthusiasm is very, very,
And hopefully
present.
they feed you.
oh man,
South America.
yeah,
Just,
they're great
yeah.
fans in South America.
Just so much energy, but so it's different. It is very different, all over the place.
And you have been to Japan? You performed in Japan?
I've not been to Japan.
Oh, okay.
No, I haven't been. That's one of the few places that I really want to get to that we haven't done yet.
That's an odd one because the fans are no less enthusiastic, but their behavior is so different. Where they'll just explode with applause after a song, but then they just go dead silent. And it's a very odd thing, but it's out of respect that they do that. We could probably take a.
Let's go.
Well, I remember hearing that live UK album that was recorded in Japan.
Night After Night?
Yeah, and thinking, boy, they really mixed that weird. And then I read something later that was like, no, the crowd shuts the hell up.
Yeah, they listen.
Yeah.
They actually listen. Yeah, it's a different experience. My first time over there, really, and Ron, you've been to Japan, right?
Yes, I was.
Yeah,
Many times. Yeah.
so it's just a complete. For the first time, when you're in Europe, you still feel like you're on the same planet, But in Japan, man, it was wow.
Now, you realize you're not anywhere close.
Oh, the
to
culture is so different there, and it's really the culture is built on mutual respect and politeness, which we,
I went on it.
Now, Bill, getting back to first of all, I agree with you about the Netherlands. I mean, it is like going back to the '70s, and it's really they have a longer attention span over there.
Yeah, like we used to.
Yeah, like we used to, and in terms of their loyalty to a band, and how much time they give it, and how big a part of their lives they allow the music to be. It's really refreshingly different. It's taking a step back in time, and you just did the live record from Tilburg,
right.
which I've actually been to that venue several times. Is it still made out of rubber? The way that they just hose the place down at night.
They've remodeled it. It's actually bigger now than probably when you were there last.
That's the 013, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I didn't notice what you're talking about, but it's. I was told that it's when Neil and Mike came in, they're like, "Hey, this is different." 'Cause they expanded it somehow. It's different, bigger.
And you would sell out those shows?
We didn't sell out. Well, we would have sold that out, except that it's expanded, so they can fit a lot more people in now. They added a balcony thing that wasn't there before, so that was closed. So we didn't technically sell it out. But
what's the typical duration of a Neil Morse tour now?
how many shows?
Yeah.
Well, the last tour was the most that I know most that Neil has done in maybe ever. I actually don't know the number of shows, but I think we were probably out for close to 3 months, all up for last year. Not all at once, in like 3 weeks at a time, kind of a thing.
So what can the fans expect from this new album for you guys as far as live performances?
Interesting question. So the new, We Came From Space, we did a few shows with a couple local shows here in Pittsburgh over the last 5 years. But we really haven't touring in the traditional sense isn't really something that we can do, I don't think. We're looking more for like the festival kind of thing where we can do one-offs and things like that.
And is everybody local? Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, Dave, I'm going to have you bring us up to the next track that we're going to listen to from the record. To show a little bit of the musical diversity of the record,
Right.
How would you describe the track that we're about to hear?
I believe the track is Business as Usual, and that's, it's one of those songs where we pretty proudly wear our influences on our sleeve, and this track has a real.
And those influences being
on like this particular track, Deep Purple, but throughout the album, I mean, there's some Jellyfish leanings, Genesis leanings. We did a very good job on the first album. We have a song that's real Pat Travers reminiscent, and on this album, we were able to put a real Pat Travers sounding bridge into a song, So that's always an influence. Probably a little, like in my playing, a little David Gilmour, or More Than a Little type stuff.
that's a pretty diverse
right.
influences on one song on the same track.
But if you are a music fan, you're fine with that. you know.
Absolutely.
And business as usual, you know, we had the opening riff, we had a verse, we even had a cool bridge section. But during the writing process, every time we came to the chorus, we would fumble around with, you know, with something, and it would just like, the chorus would just explode into this like whole other suite of music or something, and I felt that the chorus needed to go minor, but I don't have the musical chops to go, oh, it needs to do this. And it was so great, because within 5 minutes I go, this bridge, if it was just minor, I think we could really use that as a touchstone, and really the chorus would lift like you'd want it to. And Bill just took the chords we were messing with and turned it minor, and it worked. Boom. Like, it just settled right in.
So you put a lot of thought into the structure when you're doing your arrangements.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. Because although we have these prog influences, we like to work, you know, I don't think there's anything over 6 minutes on the album.
I don't think so.
You know, so these aren't epics. They're very, very short epics, you know.
Well, Eye to Eye is actually longer, but it has the whole end section.
Right.
We did.
Yeah, I love. We all love progressive rock music. You know, it's something that we all share, and you can basically throw anything into that pot, and it's gonna work. But there is something to be said about a well structured rock song or a pop song.
Right.
In some ways, it's a lot. Well, in a lot of ways, it's more difficult. You know, to write those type of songs.
When we did the first album, we were constantly asking ourselves, what can we take out of this song? How can we make it shorter?
Instead of what can we put in, it's what can we leave out.
And we didn't do that so much on the second album, but the philosophy was still sort of lurking in there that we didn't want to put anything more in than we needed to.
Okay, well, let's take a second. Let's check it out, and we'll be right back with you. we're back, and that was great for just being a guitarist. Just a guitarist, Dave. I thought that was just spectacular. So, okay. So
And
just
that's
getting
if you're just a guitarist, be just a guitarist, man. That's
But you're not
that's
just a
fighting
guitarist.
words.
You're a father. You're a guy that's a paramedic. You're
Right.
a gentleman that plays in. How many bands do you play in?
Well, I play in We Came From Space. I play in an Alice Cooper tribute band in Pittsburgh here called Muscle of Love. And
You and Bill both do, right? You're playing in that?
I'm just filling in.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go on.
And I play in like a pop, punk, power pop band called 13 Saints here in Pittsburgh. We have a couple of CDs out as well.
Which I'm holding in my hand right now. Which is the newer of the two CDs?
To the Floor is the newer of the two.
Where could people go to hear you play the 13 Saints?
Any little tiny rock and roll club in Pittsburgh. We have shows coming up in July, a Rock for Vets show. We like to help out the veterans, so we play 2 or 3 veterans benefits a year, and we're opening up for LA Guns.
Ooh.
Also in July here. So
Tracy Guns.
But our normal haunts for this little original rock and roll scene in Pittsburgh is usually pretty small venues where you have 50, 60 people and it looks full. And there again, you get 50, 60 people in these little places and it's energetic. And
right.
Have you been involved in the punk scene, through the decades, or is this something?
I've always liked it. Believe it or not, up in Clarion, Pennsylvania, there's no real punk venues to play. As difficult as that may be to imagine. So when I moved to Pittsburgh, it was just, you kind of feel out the scene and see where you can fit in. And I wanted to do original stuff because, I've played in a bunch of bar bands that do cover stuff. And
now you must have frequented the legendary Electric Banana.
I just missed that.
Oh,
right. But
you're making me feel old.
I apologize for that. Yeah, I was there one time, and it was funny. 13 Saints was doing a picture day, and our drummer's from Long Island. And I remember driving out that stretch of road, and I was like, dude.
Bomb Boulevard?
Yeah, there was a legendary Pittsburgh punk club here. And he's like, where? And I'm like, it's one of those
car dealership.
Yeah,
no, it's now an Italian restaurant, which is owned and operated by the people that own the Electric Banana.
Oh, cool.
Johnny and Judy Zara, or Johnny Banana, as we called him. Oh yeah, absolutely a legendary club. I mean, what kind of bands did you listen to back in those days? I mean, you're rooted in the scene. Yeah, I know we talked about the Jim Carroll band,
right? So, I mean, for me, very diverse. I liked Kansas, Talking Heads, Lou Reed, Yes. I mean, Pat Travers, Judas Priest, and then I tried to stay current. And
nothing from the more traditional hardcore or punk scene.
No,
okay.
I didn't think a lot of those guys played very well. So
that kind of wasn't the point with punk rock.
Absolutely. And what's funny is even with a lot of those guys, as they got better, they quit doing punk. They kind of got out of it. But I have always enjoyed like Bad Religion. Mm-hmm. Those guys can play. The guys in Pennywise can play. NoFX has a couple of really schooled musicians in there. So
I was a big Bad Religion fan. I agree, but I always thought of them as more of a rock band, to be honest with you.
Right.
I really did.
But it's like everybody has to be labeled, so Bad Religion's a punk band. And it's like to a lot of people in Pittsburgh, 13 Saints is a punk band, and it's like, no, because if you said, no, we're a power pop band, they'd go, what's that? Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, Bill, I know this is probably embarrassing to you, but you are a multi-instrumentalist. Unlike
just a multi-instrumentalist.
Just a multi-instrumentalist. what do you primarily feel is your main instrument? I mean, what?
Well, I mean, I keyboards.
What do you use to? Okay,
keyboards is it's the one. It's the instrument that I feel completely comfortable in any environment, just playing something. You know, I could join in with anybody and just start playing, and doesn't matter what style it is, I'm comfortable. Other instruments, I can, my second, guitar, I play a lot of guitar, but in certain more genre specific styles. And then I play some woodwinds, and again, kind of genre specific. Like I'm the kind of woodwind player that would play, sax and clarinet, but I'm not a jazz player, so I would be playing, like Supertramp kind of, stuff like that, more saxophone or clarinet, something like that, where it's more of a melodic instrument and not so much of a soloing instrument.
The color you added to the show, I saw you with Neil, Mr. Smalls, was amazing.
Oh, cool.
I mean, your sax just really added so much color to the show.
Thanks.
Well, was it out of necessity in some respect that you learned all these different instruments? Because it's really a very different mindset.
No, I just wanted to make noise on things, and funny, my
so there was a curiosity.
Yeah. Could I play this? So I do play some violin, which is one of the harder instruments to play.
Oh yeah.
And I'll play something that people go, wow, that's really, really good, and then I'll say, privately, I said, everything that you heard me play is all I can do on the violin. You know what I mean? Like I can do this one thing passable, and so, it's some of the multi-instrumental stuff, to be honest, is a little bit of show, because I can learn a part, but I can't just whip out a solo. I can't whip out like a really cool violin solo, or I can't whip out a really great sax solo. But you give me a part and I can practice it and learn it and play it. That's just because I never if you want to be a proficient soloist, you have to really be inside the instrument. You have to really, it has to be natural, and you have to know it and live it. And I never, who has time to do that?
Well, that's just it. I mean, you have to employ a lot of personal discipline to learn all these different instruments, and you only have so much allotted time during the day. And you've got your full-time job with Adobe. You're a multi-instrumentalist, and you've got to balance that out. How do you approach that, and what is your philosophy about just maintaining this kind of lifestyle?
It kind of has to be whatever you need at the moment. And if I need to be a good keyboard player at the moment, then I have to focus on that. If I'm gearing up for a tour for Neil Morse Band, then I'm practicing 4 hours a day for 3 weeks before the tour to really get solid. If I'm recording, and I haven't played as much guitar recently, but there's been periods of my life where I was playing a lot of guitar recording, so I needed to be good, so I focused on that, and would get a little rusty on something else. So it's just whatever's going on at the time. I have to just woodshed on that one instrument for a period of time to accomplish that goal, and then I have to set it aside and work on something else, because you can't maintain all that. And this is what I tell when I get to talk to high school kids about music, and I say that you will never have more time to master your instrument than you do right now. As soon as you graduate high school, you're into your job or whatever, and I'm a better musician now because of my experience. But as far as like technical, like my chops, I'm really no better than the day I graduated high school. I really don't think I'm any of a better technical player. I haven't really, I spent all my time in my teenage years really focusing on it. And I've learned new musical things since then. I understand music better, which lets me use my abilities more proficiently. But as far as just my technical ability to play, it's not pretty much, when you're a kid and you come home from school and you go to your room and play until bedtime and every day, that's really all the time you're ever going to have.
And there you have it. I do apologize about the abrupt end to the interview. We had a ghost in the machine, being that it was a brand new studio. It's our first time doing the podcast. And we did run into a little bit of a technical glitch, but we did have some great quality time with Dave and with Bill. And I thank them both for coming down. In Bill's case, all the way from Clarion, Pennsylvania. It was a good hour and a half drive for him just to come into the studio. We do appreciate it. And I want to thank you all for sticking around and listening. Could you tell I was nervous through the whole thing, through the monologue, through the interview itself? Again, it's with time, with experience. I'm hoping that it's just going to get a lot more smooth. And we hope that you'll tune back in once again for Don't Quit Your Day Job. Thank you. On behalf of RPM Studios, I'd like to thank Ron Pullman for all of his assistance. And we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.